Hi, I'm Dylan Gowan, and welcome to Overkill Global, BangerTV's international review show. This week, I'm talking about Australian progressive metal. I'll be giving you my essential picks from the scene. We have a local promoter who's going to give his pick on what he thinks is the best record from the scene. But before we get into that, just want to send a quick shout out to all of our Patreon supporters and to all of our subscribers. Personally, I've never been to Australia, and I apologize to my relatives in Perth. As a Canadian, we're both members of the Commonwealth, and you guys have the Queen on your money, so do we, and you guys invented plastic money. Thanks, surfers. Here's another fact that I found out. Everything can kill you. The plants, the animals, hell, even falling on the sidewalk can kill you. Apparently, you guys have a funnel web spider that is notoriously aggressive that paralyzes you within 10 seconds and kills you, so kill it with fire before it lays eggs. And finally, in the most Australian fact that I read, in 2013, apparently a feral pig stole 18 beers from a campsite and picked a fight with a cow, and apparently the story made The Guardian. Unfortunately, I don't know too many facts about Australia. However, I do know progressive metal, and I know that this scene right now in Australia is very, very exciting. How in the past 5 years especially, there's been emerging bands that have been putting out great record after great record, and you can see that Australia now is starting to be on par with, I guess, the States and England and Germany in terms of great progressive bands that are coming out of the scene. And it's just an overall exciting time, so this is gonna be fun. So since I'm Canadian, I want to be polite and give my first pick to a local expert. His name is Mike Solo. He is a local promoter and owner of Birds Robes Records out of Sydney, Australia. So let's see what Mike picks.
Hi, my name is Mike Solo, and I'm the director of the Birds Robe Collective, a record label, management company, booking agency, promoter and publisher based in Sydney in Australia. The prog metal scene in Australia is fairly diverse, but it's growing internationally pretty well. You've got everything from modern prog like Carnival and Cog, upcoming acts like Caligula's Horse and Orson Welles, brutally heavy stuff like Obliviscaris, even North Lane. You've got your classic Genesis or Queen style prog like Anubis and Toehider, post-rock bands, Sleep Makes Waves, We Lost the Sea, Meniscus, math rock bands like Pirate, Captain Kickass and the Awesomes, beautifully crafted guitar prog like Plini and I Built the Sky and James Norbert Ivany, and then there's genre-hopping, progressive-minded acts with a bit of a pop sensibility, Closure in Moscow, 12-Foot Ninja, that sort of thing. You know, in Australia you have a very disparate landscape, but one where emotionally powerful music can evoke quite strong feelings. You have to be amazing here to make your music heard internationally and get across the pond, and it's still a massive buzz and a win for the team whenever a local act gets heard and gets overseas and does really well. So I think seeing bands like Cog, Carnival, Sleep Makes Waves, Closure in Moscow, 12-Foot Ninja all do it, and become the catalyst for overseas success was very important to encourage other bands to keep going, to hone their craft, stay together long enough to produce something that's really special. My personal pick for an awesome Australian prog metal album, I think taking a broad approach, I don't think you can go past Sound Awake by Carnival, came out in 2009. The album's got everything, you know, it's got big riffs, it's got big melodies, it's got big performances and production. If you listen to it, and you get it, I think you'll understand why this band is so important and so loved by people. It really marked a shift away from standard radio rock and towards greater experimentation by Australian bands, and I think it's defined an era of Australian underground music that's followed it. And if you don't get it, that's cool too.
Solid pick, Mike. I see you played Knifey Spoony before. Before we get started, I just want to be clear, this is not a top 5 list. This is more about the chronological order of the scene. So for my first pick, which came out in 2010 on Warner Brothers Records and was reissued by Sumerian Records, it's Letter Circus' first debut album. This is The Warning. This band formed in Brisbane in 2004, and this album really kicked off their career. So much like with Carnival, Dead Letter Circus is one of those bands that really helped emerge the scene in the 2010s. This is The Warning, is one of the most pinnacle parts of the scene. It really helped kickstart their career and really helped push the scene internationally. What I really like about this band is the blend of all these different styles that they're incorporating into their sound, such as electronic music with industrial and alternative rock. Their vocalist Kim is an incredible vocalist, super strong throughout the whole entire record, and he is a fantastic lyric writer. When it comes to reviewing albums, I'm usually pretty nerdy about the music, but in this case, I'm nerdy about the lyrics. He's talking about very dark, personal topics, how we view ourselves in society, the ever-emerging topic of social media, as apart from normally fantasies and gothic tones you normally find within progressive metal lyrics. I know this might sound a little bit sacrilege, but to me they kind of sound like a heavier version of U2. Great songwriting, great grooves, great hooks, powerful lyrics, fantastic debut album by these guys, and that's why I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 skulls. So moving forward a couple of years, for my second pick, I'm going to choose 12 Foot Ninja's debut album, Silent Machine, which came out in 2012 on Volcanic Music. They formed in Melbourne in 2008, and these guys are a total YouTube sensation. You might have seen this video before, but here it is again.
Be ready, I'm coming for you! Always within instead of without, so much so we have forgotten all about you. If we were to be sure, we had to save the doubt, but now you know there is a plan in place to pierce through the veil and absolve you.
So again, this is another debut album by 12 Foot Ninja, and after releasing a couple of EPs that were as well super solid, now they get right into Silent Machine. And much like with Dead Letter Circus, these guys blend different styles of music, but with their case, it's more Latin, funk, and reggae. Especially there's a strong reggae presence as well with tracks like Deluge and Mother Sky and Luna. And what's great about these guys is that they're such monster players, but they know how to have fun with it, like you see in all their videos. Especially in my favorite video of theirs called Ain't That a Bitch, was actually funded by their fans back in 2012, and it's just a funny video. And a lot of the lyrics are very almost passive-aggressive. There's a little bit of personal topics as well, but they're doing it in more of a humorous manner versus a very serious manner like Dead Letter Circus is. Despite them acting like goofballs, these guys are monster players. They're kind of like, in my opinion, Faith No More on steroids. Much like with Dead Letter Circus, 12 Foot Ninja's Silent Machine is a perfect debut for this band. They have such a clever way of blending in all these styles. Like, you think it's going to go to a place that's predictable, then the album completely slaps you across the face and just goes, nope, we're going into this section, and it works so well. It's an amazing album. You have to check it out. So for Silent Machine, I'm giving it 5 out of 5 skulls. For my third pick, I decided I was going to go with Vanishing Point, Distant is the Sun, which came out in 2014 on Dockyard 1 Records. These guys are the oldest band on my list, and they formed way back in 1995 in Melbourne, and this is their 5th studio album, and I think it's their best.
Polarized, we are existing in 2 different worlds. Where do we go from here? I need to know. Dead inside and isolated, living in reverse. Where do we go from here? I need to
So Distant is the Sun is, in my opinion, their Blackwater Park. It just combines great elements of symphonic metal with power metal, and they almost sound like Dream Theater mixed in with Alter Bridge, and the use that they have with all these crazy orchestral parts and great catchy hooks, it just makes for an overall awesome, solid record by these guys. So if you're into the more power metal influenced side of progressive metal, you really have to check these guys out. They're kind of like Australia's versions of Symphony X. Great orchestral moments, great grooves, great drumming, great vocals, and so I'm gonna give this one 4.5 out of 5 skulls. With my fourth pick, we obviously cannot make a list about Australian progressive metal without mentioning these guys. These guys are driving the train with progressive metal right now, and that is Obliviscaris with their second album, Citadel, which came out in 2014 on Seasons of Mist. These guys formed in 2003 in Melbourne, and they combine death metal with classical music. And if you've been looking for something on more the heavier side of the prog spectrum, here it is. Citadel is the record that really defined Obliviscaris on the prog scene, especially with Portal of Eye. Despite that one being an amazing record, this one just really put them over the edge in terms of songwriters. Tim's violin playing is fantastic, Zen's vocals, Daniel's drumming's incredible, the guitars are great, and the funny thing about this record is that it's only 3 songs. But in classic prog fashion, they cut it up into so many different little songs, so tip of the cap to those guys for being old school. This is the record actually that made me look at the Australian scene and go, wow, there's a lot of great bands out here. It's no surprise that these guys are leading the train in terms of progressive metal that's coming out of Australia. It's just a perfect record, and so obviously I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5. With my fifth and final pick, I'm gonna have to go with my favorite current album, which came out in 2016, which is Plini, Handmade Cities, which came out independently. Plini is one guy out of Sydney, Australia, and he's an absolute monster guitar player who took Bandcamp by storm. And here's the reason why. So if you're a fan of Animals as Leaders, Intervals, The Contortionist, Destiny Potato, you really have got to check this guy out. He's an absolute monster songwriter, and the compositions all flow super well together, especially on tracks like Cascade and the one that you just saw, Electric Sunrise. Those ones are just absolute crazy, awesome guitar playing and awesome drumming, bass playing, and everything. Also, on this record, he has Troy Wright on drums. And that guy's a crazy YouTube sensation who's an amazing player, and it blends so well with Plini's playing. There's a lot of jazz influence on this record, as well as some metal stuff. It has a little bit of a djenty vibe to it, but it's not in terms of a djenty style, in terms of more of a of a Meshuggah kind of a thing. He does it in kind of a jazzier way, almost like a cynic. So I'm a drummer, not a guitar player, but listening to this whole album, I just felt nothing but inspired to go home and practice. The compositions were amazing, great melodies, great hooks, great blend of styles, and I can't recommend this album enough. So that's why I'm giving this album 5 out of 5 skulls. So what do we learn about Australian progressive metal? Well, much like their wildlife, they're killing it. It's a really exciting time, especially as a prog fan, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. Before we go, just want to have a couple of shout outs from our Patreon donors. And they chose one really solid album, Kaluga's Horse, In Contact, and of course, the second album, which is no surprise, is Obliviscaris' first album, Portal of Eye. Again, guys, completely solid picks. And that about does it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If there's any albums you think we missed from Australia, please leave a comment below, and I'd love to check them out. Cheers, mates.